and welcome back to Affordable Air Gunning. Today, a tutorial, rather lengthy one, 20-25 minutes. Kral puncher bull-pup, disassembly, opening up and installing one of these lane regulators supplied by Robert Lane from the UK. Great value for money, excellent product. At present, there are one or two videos of a regulator being installed, specifically in the puncher. This one I think will be more comprehensive for those who've not actually disassembled the rifle before. So if you can disassemble it, it will be a bit lengthy. Otherwise, follow the step-by-step guidelines. This rifle at present has a regulator in it. I installed it about 9 months ago. However, when I installed it, I saw that the current receiver unit was very, very badly machined in a very, very bad state. Subsequently, I've had a fight for the last 9 months with Kral, and thanks to Mr. Salah from Al Sayed Hunting in Dubai, he took on the fight on my behalf, and my new receiver came yesterday. So I will change the receiver as well as show you guys how to install this lane regulator. You cannot start working on this rifle whilst you still have pressure inside the reservoir. You need to purge the pressure or reduce the pressure till about, I would say, about 40 or 50 bars by literally cocking, shooting, cocking, shooting until the rifle reaches about 40 or 50 bar. I won't go less than that. At very low pressure, the impact of the hammer onto little valve apparently can damage the valve on the inside. So I reduce my pressure to about 50 bar, and then I will purge the cylinder, and I'll show you how to do that. So first, purge. Okay, with the pressure now reduced to about 40 bar, scope comes off. Silencer off. Now, as mentioned, next step, the only screw that holds the rifle part to the stock is in the hand grip here. Put in your Allen key, twist it, and then just gently pop your little cover out, and inside here you'll see the Allen key screw. If you leave this inside and work through it, it's fine. However, if the screw drops later from taking it out too far, you're going to have to take it off in any case. I just take it off every time. Insert my Allen key, and it wasn't too tight, and I remove this bolt until the rifle is. That is all that holds it, and now very easy, it just lifts your rifle, literally just lift out, and the whole rifle comes out. I'm going to put this in its rest. From here now, remove the end cap, number 1, the end cap, 2, the little support that guides and holds the barrel position. It only has 2 little grub screws, very easy, 1, 2 grub screws. Undo those until they're nice and far out and slide that back. Next, undo the little nighlok. Correction. Next, we'll undo the nighlok that holds the rod from the trigger to the trigger assembly. And lastly, over here, there's a bolt, a single bolt that holds tension on the guide and scope rail, and we will then slide that off. So let me do that quickly. I have 2 O-rings in the front here. Just make sure your grub screws are far enough out that you don't damage the O-rings when you take it off. And just slides off, comes there. Then 5.5mm socket to remove the nighlok. If you don't have metric, 7x32 does the trick as well. Make sure you don't lose that. Now, a single bolt over here. Just do it until you can feel that it's loose. And very simple. Again, everything now slides forward and off. Next, we want to remove the barrel from the receiver. There are two grub screws, two that hold the barrel, and a third one on the left hand side, which you don't have to worry about. That one on the left is what holds the little spring and the ball in for the power adjuster on the side here. So that one stays, these two grub screws come out. As a word of caution, for the first time when you do this, take them completely out. Inspect with a torch, because mine had some metal burrs in there, and when I removed the barrel, subsequently destroyed the whole inside of my receiver. One of the reasons I now have a new receiver. So continue with that. These Allen keys, these grub screws should be reasonably tight, but don't strip and hurt them. I know that this is clean because I've cleaned this, so I'm not going to take them, I'm just raising them till they're up. And very easy, again, the barrel with its two little O-rings just slide out. Next, we want to remove the reservoir from the receiver. Upside down, and again, two grub screws, 1, 2. These bolt down, and this is just a spare valve assembly. Valve assembly screws into the reservoir, and this unit goes into the receiver. Two grub screws hold it in position. You will see there are two indents in the valve assembly. The barrel has the same, and your grub screws need to be aligned with those. So, again, same thing. The first time I take this part, I would remove these fully to make sure there are no metal burrs due to poor quality control at Kral, and I would inspect it. I know this is clean, so I'm just going to continue. And again, just pulls out like that. Receiver. But remember, we still have 50 bars pressure. For that, we need to purge the remaining air by just pushing down on a block of wood and push the little valve in. Don't do it on here. If you do it on your table, the purge of air is going to blow all your stuff away. Put it on the floor and just purge down. Take note, it's going to be very loud. Don't do it with 100 bars. That's too much. But from about 50, it will just be a very loud and it will be empty. Once it's empty, a little tip is to take some cardboard, just a piece of cardboard that I folded, or cardstock, I think the Americans call it, put it over my valve assembly so that I don't damage the valve assembly. Firm, and you should be able to undo the valve assembly quite easily. On here, it's a little burst disc, safety valve, a little brass nut, don't worry about that. Inside's a small little brass washer, and if the pressure is too high, that washer is supposed to rupture before the cylinder damages. Now, as easy as this, out, and you now have your valve assembly. I already have a regulator in here, so just to show you slight differences between the new one, it's just a spare. If you look at that, you will see that the deepinger cap on this one has a bit of a gap there, and this one is flush. The reason for that is because of the dowel ring bushing which is inside here. So I will now open this up, take a shifting, don't use pliers, you're going to damage it, and open up the deepinger cap. As you remove it, you'll get the cap, valve spring, and inside will be just pressured from the top. The little valve will drop out. Now I'm just going to remove my dowel ring bush to show you what it looked like. So, supplied in your kit, it's a little dowel ring bush. When you take yours out, it will be empty once these three components have been removed. You need to take your little dowel ring bush that is in there and insert the dowel ring bush with its two O-rings into the valve assembly. Previously, the air was sealed off in the reservoir with an O-ring that sits over here. This O-ring. You need to remove this O-ring when you install the regulator. So you remove this O-ring, it will no longer seal. It actually needs air to be able to purge past here and for the regulator to do a bit of breathing. So that is removed. This O-ring is removed. It will now look like this with no O-ring in there. So next, take your dowel ring bushing. I silicone grease everything. Everything I put back in, I put a silicone grease, and I'm not too conservative, rather liberal with my grease. If you don't have in your packet, it's supplied packet of silicone grease, and I literally, I'm not shy, I put a fair amount of grease on all my components. So grease it up, make sure your valve assembly should be clean as clean. Drop your dowel ring bushing into your valve assembly. It'll drop down to the bottom. And next up, what you have to keep in mind is that the valve is designed to be hit by the hammer. This valve that sits inside the valve assembly. It's hit by the hammer when you pull the trigger. That pushes this back and allows air to pass into your passage and into the rifle. If you have a regulator, the pressure in the valve assembly area will drop to, in this case, 135, and I've adjusted mine down to 125 bar versus the normal 200 to 150 bar. So you have less pressure pushing onto this valve, and you need to either increase your spring tension or supplied, again in the kit, supplied is a little plastic spacer bush, this little spacer. This spacer, you need to just drop it inside your deepinger cap. This one's already in. You just drop your spacer in there. Now, ready for reassembly. As quickly and as easy as that. Again, don't be shy with your grease. And all the O-rings I give grease. Valve goes back inside. Drop it in. Valve spring seats onto that deepinger cap. You can give a bit of, again, don't be shy, can't do any damage. Just put a bit of silicone grease on the threads. And Bob's your uncle. I don't over torque, just a little bit past finger tight in. Don't want to damage that dowel ring bush. And remember, the O-rings will do their job. They will seal. So just past finger tight, just a notch past finger tight in, and it is sealed. Now, the air can no longer come from the valve assembly. It The only way to get out is now through the little deepinger, the hole of the deepinger cap. Previously, because it didn't have an O-ring, it could actually leak through here. But now what we're going to do is we're going to take the regulator, and I'll show you where the regulator fits. First, I just have to remove it because mine's in here already. So I'll just remove it quickly and then continue and show you what to do. Okay, I have now removed the regulator that was inside the reservoir. It's been removed. This is what it looks like. I've got a detailed tutorial on my channel on exactly how a regulator works. If you've got another, it's a long one, 25-minute tutorial. You can go and look at that. It explains everything on the regulator. I have just adjusted mine with it down with about 10 bars down because I want this one that's a bit powerful. I want it to shoot a little bit softer. So it's been adjusted. Yours will look like this. Again, you will see that there's a little O-ring on the end of the valve. That O-ring will now seal onto your deepinger cap. In the past, once this is inside the reservoir, what kept all the air in was this O-ring that you have removed. So it's all just air. Now, the air comes in the reservoir. Let me do it from this side. The air is inside the reservoir. It has to go through the regulator, regulated inside the chamber, and now that O-ring and the deepinger cap are sealing onto each other. Which means from the regulator in the chamber, and this whole area now is regulated. In this case, mine should be about 125 bars. The air sealed on here, the dowel ring bushing inside here prevents air coming out over here, and you now have a regulated section of air. 200 bars this side, 125 bars this side, and that's all that will leave the valve assembly. Okay, when you insert the regulator, it goes in tip first, don't push it in too far. Only up to where the thread stops. Let the back end push it in only up to where the thread stops on the reservoir. You actually, by screwing this in, you want the valve assembly to push the regulator the last little bit so that this seal is good. Again, be liberal with your grease. I've already greased this up, already greased the front, so I'm going to push this in here. It's easy, fast. I've also already cleaned my air reservoir. It's been cleaned properly, so gently take it past the threads. It goes in, and just till it's in. Now, when you insert your valve assembly, it will push and seal itself into position. And as quick and as easy as that was, we now have a regulated reservoir. This I only tighten hand tight. It's a bit greasy. No need to tighten anymore because we actually want a bit of air to be able to come out the seam here for the regulator to breathe. Again, it's explained in the tutorial. You want a little bit of air. There's a breathing hole and you want a little bit of air to be able to breathe out here. It's minuscule. It doesn't do anything to your shot count, but that has to be removed. These O-rings, if they're still in a good condition, you can leave them on. I fitted some aftermarket ones. I will grease them, and I am now ready for reassembly. Put a grease there and ready. Once you're ready, grease up, reverse the process, make sure these two indents are pointing towards the grub screws, vertically up, in, and now once I've tightened it just till I can feel it touches, it shouldn't be able to wiggle. If you've turned this down till it just touches and you can actually move it, it means it's not in the indent. Make sure it's aligned. And I can tighten the front one now. Firm, but don't over torque. I don't have torque settings for it. Just get a feel for it, a nice little firm little tighten there. Next up, barrel, exactly the same thing. What you can do while it's out, give it a good clean. Remember these Krals, until you've cleaned this barrel 2 or 3 times, the grouping is rather poor. Once you've cleaned this barrel, it's phenomenal. Again, 2 little indents. I've already greased this up. The indents point towards the 2 grub screws, and all the way in. Yep, that is aligned. Tighten the grub screws. I can't tell you how tight to do them. Firm, but don't over torque. You don't want to damage a grub screw or strip it. And that is now in. Reverse of what we had. So remember, it was 1, 2, 3. So obviously this slides back over the barrel, in, and guide, as you push it back, guide the rod so that it enters into the trigger assembly at the back. And if you can, before you disassemble it, you can maybe take some correction fluid and just make a mark on the top where you can see it, just a little white dot to know how far to come back. Otherwise, you take a bit of time to align it once it's in. Put your nighlok in position. This nighlok is also what you adjust to have your first stage, adjust your first stage of the trigger. I virtually eliminate my first stage. However, keep in mind that if you do too much, you can't cock the rifle. So make sure that when you put this back onto your little white mark that you've made, put this in position that you are not actually putting the trigger already by putting it in too far. It won't cock. If it's too far back, I'll show you here. Now it's cocking. Okay. If you've moved this too far, turn that in too far, it literally won't cock. It'll just go forward. So don't overdo that. Set your first stage according to your liking. I eliminate my first stage. I have it so that it's only the final little pull in. And you can slightly nudge up this bolt because you still have to do the final adjustment to see if it fits perfectly into the stock. And now, lastly, return. I've already put some grease there. Return that. And if it's lying in and it's not touching or forcing against the barrel, you can lock this one up now. Lock up. And we are now ready to go back into the stock. Okay, once you have your stock back up, for the alignment, if you did not make a little white mark on here, what you do, bring your stock into position, slide it gently down, and move this gently. Remember, I didn't over torque that, just slightly tighten that. And now make sure the alignment, the little indents in your stock over here, that those indents align with these 2 sections of the frame. If they're aligned, you can see, yeah, mine is aligned now. So now I can lock it. Now it will drop in and it will sit in. All you have to do now is put back the screw. However, if you want to do any adjustment on your trigger, now's the time before you tighten this up. Yes, it's cocking, and don't pull the trigger with this. Don't pull it down. You have no air. So just hold it with your hand here and just feel your, yeah, this trigger is perfect. I'm happy with the trigger, and just set that. And now put the screw back in here, put your cap on, and you have a regulated PCP. Scope back on, silencer back on, cap back on, and you're done. Just a word of caution or keep in mind, by the time you bolt the rifle onto the stock with this bolt that's in here with the Allen key, I have found that once it's tightened, the rifle didn't want to stay locked or cocked. When I pull it back, it didn't want to lock into the firing position, just kept coming forward. Initially adjusted a bit on my first stage pull. It wasn't the first stage pull, it was this mechanism that had to move 0.5 millimeter back. Once I moved it 0.5 millimeter back, put it back in, then it was cocking. So if you reassemble everything and it doesn't want to stay cocked, it could be your system here has to move 0.5 millimeter back, or maybe you've adjusted your first stage too much. Either or, just make sure that you don't get to this stage and then realize your rifle doesn't want to cock. So before fitting the scope and the silencer, make sure that it is cocking once you've put it back, and once you've torqued this nut into position, make sure that that is all good. I will put up a short 5-minute video in 2 or 3 weeks once I've gone shooting on how this regulator performs and how the adjustment from 135 to 125 bars affected my shooting. And I will also do a test where I take one of these adjustment valves and actually drill it 4 millimeters bigger as recommended by Lane. Currently, it's still standard. I've not done any drilling to it. Happy hunting and be safe.